Well, I just want to welcome you to this Focus on Discipleship interview. This time we are talking to Pastor Matthew Shaylor, and I'll let him introduce himself in just a minute. But just as we have with all of our other interviews, I just want to sort of set the stage for you as to why it is that we're focusing on discipleship. And this was something that we started at the beginning of this recent pandemic. I was prompted to do that because of the extraordinary circumstances that we found ourselves in, that the church found itself in. It was really a once in a generation occurrence that suddenly we were no longer allowed or able to gather together physically. And I was reminded in the book of Acts in chapter 8, where it talks about that the church was experiencing persecution. Actually, not just persecution, but great persecution. And as a result of that great persecution, many in Jerusalem that were there, the believers that were there, were scattered. And chapter 8 focuses on Philip and his going out from Jerusalem and how he reacted to this great persecution. And what he did, rather than laying low and waiting until the persecution was over, waiting until things calmed down and settled down before he once again began to do what the believers had been doing up until that point, Philip continued to reach out and he continued to make disciples. In fact, he was so successful in Samaria that the apostles who were still in Jerusalem heard about what Philip was doing, and they sent some of the apostles out to investigate. And so later on in the chapter, most of you know that Philip, once again, when he moved on from Samaria, that he encountered an Ethiopian eunuch, and he witnessed to that individual as well. So Philip, regardless of the persecution and the circumstances that he found himself in, he was always reaching out and he was always making disciples. He was always doing what God called God's people to do, regardless of the circumstances. And so I was thinking about that and this the situation which we found ourselves in, and that, again, it would have been very easy to just hold back and to wait until we were allowed to once again resume our normal church activities. But really, we need to be who we're called to be. We need to continue to focus on discipleship, even in these extraordinary circumstances. And so that's why we have that theme of focusing on discipleship. I also wanted to talk to IFCA pastors and leaders and inquire as to how it is that they are approaching discipleship in this current situation and how they have been approaching discipleship and plan to in the future. And so we've interviewed some various leaders, and this evening we're talking to Matt. And I'm going to let Matt, at this point, for the benefit of those of you who don't know him, introduce himself and tell us a little bit about himself. So Matt, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, well, hello, everyone. My name is Matt Shaylor. And before anything, I have to, of course, introduce my wife, Sammy, as well. Sammy Shaylor. She, anything that I share about myself, she has to be included in, because without her, none of it works, right? But my wife, Sammy, and I have 3 children, Isabella, Matthew, and Joshua. I live in Cleveland, Ohio, and I have had the honor to serve in ministry for about 10 years of my life. I started really teaching children's Sunday school, and kind of developed in that all the way up to recently, about 2 years. For about 2 years now, we just planted a church called Merge City Church. I'm in Mayfield Heights, Ohio, which is a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio, and we have been serving alongside of some wonderful people in this community. I had the honor of being a part of a church plant in the community that I grew up in, which is pretty cool to see as well. I also have the honor of serving as the Northwest District of the IFCA's Kids Camp Director, Children's Ministry Director, and we get the honor of putting on our district camp for children every year. Also, with all that, my full-time job, I work as an operating room nurse here in Cleveland, and that's a pretty big part of me as well.
Amen. So it sounds as though, Matt, you have a decent breadth of experiences. You have been involved in kids ministry, you and your wife, you're pastoring, you are currently planting a brand new church.
Mm-hmm.
How is it that you when you look at this breadth of experiences that you have, do you see all of those as strengths, and how do you try to bring all of that experience together in your current assignment?
Sure. I think it revolves around my story and where God has taken me from, and the abilities that God has gifted me into to be able to be where I'm at. I mean, none of it would have happened without the grace of God in my life as a teenager. Really, Christ finding me and saving me as a teenager, but everything that goes on in my life and the different areas that I have the honor of serving in really revolves around that truth, and that God found me in that, and that I'm able to really to be a part of each and every area like that has been pretty cool to see. Each area has kind of helped me grow up into who I am today, and I know that there's a long way for me to go. But really one of the best parts about that is my wife and I really grew up in ministry together. And we started as teenagers together. I found me and her met at actually a youth camp, the NWD youth camp. And she was 15 and I was just 2 years older than her. And we've gotten to grow in ministry together. And that's really taught us that ministry is not a profession. It's not a job, but it's a lifestyle. It's a way of life. Everything about our life revolves around how we can be Christ-like in people's lives, from opening up our doors to our home to opening up the doors of a church.
So it sounds as though for you, really, ministry is a partnership. It's not a one-man show. It's you engage with your family, obviously. Does that translate over into Merge City Church? Do you try to cultivate partnership with other leaders? How does that work for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Really, our heart as a church for Merge is taking that Sunday morning message and turning it into our Monday morning mission. Everyone that walks into Merge City Church on a Sunday or watching online has somewhere to be Monday morning. Myself, the other pastors that are on our leadership team, all of our leadership, we all work somewhere Monday morning, or we have somewhere to be Monday morning that isn't a church. So really that heart of understanding being the church and being mobile isn't just a word we use because we are a mobile church and we rent a space, but really it's part of our heart as a ministry to be mobile in the marketplace, in the home, and in partnership with one another, in relationship with one another. Merge City Church isn't just in a building in Mayfield on Sunday morning, but we believe Merge City Church is in all the surrounding communities that people that join us that are a part of the mission are in. And that Merge really encompasses a lot more space than just the space that we meet in on a Sunday morning.
Mm-hmm. So then, because we're talking about discipleship, do you see the fact that you're bivocational and some of your leadership are bivocational, that really helps you be better at making disciples?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's a pretty unique opportunity that I have, really because I'm challenged every day that I go to work or if I'm wherever I'm going throughout the week, to remember that really it's pretty important that I practice what I preach, not just because I myself am a pastor and there's some type of I don't know, stigma that comes with that, but really more so because I represent Christ on Sunday as well as on Monday, which is something that can be pretty hard to transfer over for some people, and even for me. There are some Monday mornings I wake up and I do not want to go to work, but it's important to remember, especially being bivocational in my life personally, that who I am on Sunday morning needs to be who I strive to be on Monday morning. And I think that's a pretty important thing for all of us as believers to stick to.
Mm-hmm. So we're talking about discipleship. What does discipleship look like for you? I mean, if you had to define it and describe it, how would you do that?
I think discipleship is living out, teaching the gospel through action, specifically in relationships with Christ first and then with others. Discipleship starts, and I believe starts and ends with relationships. If our relationship with Christ, in particular discipleship with Christ, obviously, I mean, discipleship does cover a wide range of areas. You can be a disciple in other areas other than the church, obviously, but talking in particular about Christ and the church. If your relationship with Christ is strong, then your relationship with others will be strong, and your ability to have relationship with others should be strong. So then discipleship stems from that. The question we have to ask ourselves is, are we good disciples to Christ? Are we heeding to his teachings and what he showed us and taught us through his life and in our continuing moments that we spend with him? And then are we turning around and living that life out loud, and teaching that same to those that we're around in the relationships that we're in?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So as a church plant, I mean, your situation is such that, you didn't walk into an existing church body and sort of inherit that body and then build upon that. You're really starting from the ground up. Mm-hmm. So does that affect the way you approach evangelism and discipleship? I mean, obviously it maybe the need for it is a little more urgent because, you're trying to build something from nothing really. But how does that nuance your approach to discipleship, being a church plant and being starting from the ground up and from nothing really?
Yeah, I think it starts with just that one person. I think it allows you to recenter your focus on relationships individually, one at a time. Really, for a church to ever grow, you need to be able to step out and to build relationships, especially with those you may not know. And that's something difficult to do if you're not ready for it. But I think it really revolves around where your heart is as a body, as a group of leaders, as a church. If you're willing to put time into a relationship with that one person, without the end result in mind. I mean, if the goal, the motive is to see that person grow. I love one of the statements that I've always kind of clung to my heart is that we want to see big people. We want to see people grow big, not our church grow big. And we want to see individuals experience that presence of God, that good news of God's love in a way that impacts their whole life. And through discipleship in that way and through relationship that way, naturally, your church is going to grow. So if the focus is on the one, then that one turns into two just because that one is going to mirror that relationship with someone else.
Right. Are you finding that, again, as a church plant, as a new work, that maybe you don't have to work as hard to get the body that you're building there to really engage in the process of discipleship as much as you would in a more established church?
I think it comes with different challenges, in a sense that we're all coming from different places and having to understand where each and every one of us come from. There isn't. It's a unique challenge, and it's also a benefit in a sense that when you start just as a team that grows into a church, and you get to see every person that comes through the door, the first conversation you have with that person gets to be the first conversation they have with somebody from the church. So you get to be a part of that. And unlike the challenge that may present itself if you're walking into an established church where you kind of have to get used to everyone, and that's a beautiful thing, and that's a part of relationship, but being able to focus on the one or the family as they walk in is a beautiful part of being able to start the way that we started. And now our heart is that the families that are a part of Merge have that same heart. So as somebody's walking in for the first time, it starts over again, for that family. And we get to have that conversation, build that relationship, and start from there as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be a lot harder in a smaller, a church plant for someone to come who's never been before to hide, right? As opposed to, a more established church. So, yeah. You mentioned that you oversee the Northwest District Kids Camp, and that you've been involved in kids ministry and youth ministry, right?
Yeah.
So you've been in, that was where you got your start, right?
Yeah, my wife and I actually, I started actually a Christian Assembly in Richmond Heights as a Sunday school teacher, just I think at 15. But then my wife and I in Akron were part of the children's ministry down there.
Okay.
That's kind of where we first really started in ministry.
Okay. So as far as, ministering to kids, and anyone who's listening to this and maybe feels called to kids or to youth, what kind of unique challenges do you find when it comes to discipling kids?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah, our church in particular, our heart has always been to recognize the importance of children not being the future, but being the now, just as much as any adult that would walk into the building. And that's our heart. So anytime we look into discipleship, especially with children, we need to remember that. And that's our focus, is that we're not discipling, we're not hoping to disciple a child for them to be better in the future, but for their relationship with God now. And really the fun part about children and children's ministry is they have a lot. I don't know, it's a lot easier to have a conversation with them in regards to faith, in regards to just reading scripture, and there isn't that mature thought that goes through their mind that says, well, this doesn't make sense, or really and I think that's why Christ is so big on when it comes to being with children and having a childlike faith, because there isn't that blockage that kind of comes with age and experience in life, which makes discipleship with children really pretty unique, to be able to have conversations with them without having to worry about, are they going to believe this? Because if you tell them that Jesus walked on water, it's not about, well, how does that work? I mean, I've never seen anyone walk on water before. That doesn't make sense to really like, oh my goodness, he walked on, well, that's incredible. That's crazy. And then you're able to turn it to the same and saying, with Christ, all things are possible. And their faith is there. It's pretty unique. It's pretty incredible. And really having the mindset to know that, especially in our day and age and in our culture today, children from every family, from all families, from different walks of life, they're experiencing the same type of pressure, the same type of challenges, they're living in the same world that we adults are living in. They're seeing the same things more than we ever did as kids, and I ever did as kids, because they're exposed to it so early, which is why it's so crucial and so important that we pour into them pretty early on.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I had a question. I was going to try to remember what it was, and then when you said that, I kind of got taken off. But I like what you said about that they are now, that we're not just investing in them in the hopes that this is the future of our church.
Yeah.
But that really you're investing in them now so that they can be effective and fruitful now.
Absolutely.
And even be disciple makers themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So obviously, in pastoral ministry, I'm sure one of the things you're on the lookout for are, future leaders, those that you're going to invest in to raise them up, maybe looking for those that they have a call of God into maybe one of the fivefold ministry offices or something like that. What is your approach to identifying and then preparing potential leaders to come into and eventually, maybe become a pastor or an evangelist or, a kids church leader?
Yeah, sure. I think it's pretty important to know that person, which is why I think relationships are so crucial. There has never been the same leader that's, I know we as leaders try and replicate ourselves through people, right? We try and teach them the wisdom that we have or the experiences that we've gone through, but it's important to know that my heart should not be to create another Matt Shaylor, but rather prepare and empower people to be the best leader that they can be through what God has gifted them. So I think really acknowledging who that person is, their story, where they came from. That's so crucial, I think, when it comes to watching somebody grow in leadership and through discipleship, is to know where they came from. We didn't all just come out of an assembly line, right? I mean, we've all experienced different experiences and have faced different trials through our childhood, through our teen years, through adulthood. So knowing that, understanding that, and then pairing Christ with that. And that's through whether it be opening the Bible with that person, experiencing the Bible with that person, having conversations with that person, but also building that relationship with them, practically putting our hands to the plow together, getting our hands dirty, having difficult conversations with people. I think that's so important as leaders, that we understand in a leadership role, especially through discipleship, that the loudest we can speak is through the actions that we take in front of them. And the only way that we're ever going to be the best leader we can be is if we are discipling through action first. I think it's pretty important that that's the case. And I mean, I think of like in 2 Corinthians where it's talked about how we are open letters, read by everyone, open and read by everyone. I heard it best. Somebody said, I can't remember who it was, but that there may be people we encounter throughout our life that have never read the Bible or hasn't read the Bible as much as you have, but they will read your life. I think the same goes in discipleship. It's one thing to read the Bible and to experience that, and that's so crucial. But to see someone else that you are under or that you're serving with live it out, I think that speaks pretty loud as well.
Yeah. Reading your life. I like that. Obviously, these interviews are what the college is putting on. And so, I would be remiss if I didn't mention, the IFCA Bible College. And once again, it is interesting to me that, as I talk to pastors, that there's certain things that they tend to emphasize and things that pastors like yourself value and put a premium on.
Yeah.
And once again, those values really line up with the values that we have in the IFCA Bible College. We place great importance on mentoring, having that relationship, allowing, a student to read your life, to encounter ministry through you. That's one of our pillars. Personal mentoring. Every student, we assign them a mentor each and every trimester. We hook them up with ministry leaders like yourself and encourage them to just listen and learn, what does ministry look like, both positive and negative. Learn from this person. Allow them to invest in your life. Yeah. And I'm hearing that over and over again. The relationship, the partnership, the investment that we make into the lives of others. And that's personal mentoring. We also emphasize practical ministry experience. That's another one of our pillars. The idea, as you said, putting our hands together at the plow and working together and having opportunity to have practical ministry experience. And so that's, again, action, putting what we're learning into practice. And then, of course, our other two pillars, one is academic excellence. We provide a very high quality academic theological education. And lastly, cost effectiveness. We're very cost effective. But as far as the IFCA is concerned, that's what blesses me about this partnership so much, that over and over again, the IFCA and its leadership values relationship, it values personal interaction, personal relationship, and hands-on experience working with those that are called into the ministry to help raise them up and plug them in and get them out there and doing exactly what you're doing, Matt. Start churches, pastoring, working with youth, working with young people. So let's say a student that we have in the college would be going to your church or would be in proximity to your church and wanted to be plugged in for practical ministry at your church. What kind of opportunities could you give them?
I think probably the greatest opportunity that we could provide as a church would be through our Sunday morning experiences, but also through connection throughout the week. Really, as a new church, we don't have many ministries per se in regards to separate ministries that meet throughout the week. That's part of the challenge of being a mobile church. But what we do have is we believe in reaching out to those people and just being involved, being together. Really, our heart is to be intentionally present. That's one of our core values, is presenting ourselves in places, in busy places, really. So I think that would be something as an opportunity for a student, is to get active the way that we're active within our community. It may not necessarily be a ministry in sense, but really just the ministry of our church in general, through community events, through relationships with people. We're always trying to connect with ministries within our community. One is being like Young Life or the city of Mayfield Heights. So I think that would be a pretty unique opportunity that we as a church can provide. We feel very honored to have the relationships that we do with our community. In getting out there, being present, businesses in the school district as well.
Yeah, and I think that is equally valid to any experience that a person would get within the church, to have the opportunity to do ministry outside the four walls of the church. Maybe I sometimes think we don't necessarily emphasize that enough. So that would be a tremendous opportunity. Well, Matt, I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us, and I'd like to just give you the final word here. There's anything that you'd like to share to wrap this up, or just to communicate to our audience, and so go right ahead.
Oh, well, thank you so much again for the opportunity. I'm honored that you asked me to be a part of this, and I'm honored to be a part of what you guys are doing. And I really strongly believe in what you have going with the IFCA and the Bible College and seminary. We're excited to see what God is going to continue to do through that, and excited to see who God starts to bring up. Obviously, with what's going on in our country and our world. More so than ever, the church needs to rise up, and I'm honored to be able to have this discussion with you and to hear our hearts and the hearts of many pastors within the IFCA to get moving, to get acting, to get out there, to start sharing the good news of God's love. And so thank you very much for this opportunity.
All right. Well, that concludes this interview. I want to thank Matt Shaylor, Pastor Matt Shaylor, for taking the time to share with us. the breadth of experience, ministry experience that he has, and I hope you've all been blessed by it. God bless.